There was no falling, no rush of air, no sense of down, just light. Not the kind that shines, not the kind that warms. A light that thinks, a light that remembers. Elara floated inside it without body, without breath, without edges. For a moment, or a century, she did not know where she ended, and the radiance began. Something in the brightness was looking back at her. Not with eyes, with awareness. Slowly, the light began to organize itself, not into shapes, but into tones. Soft hums, low chords, ripples of soundless sound rolling through her like distant thunder that had forgotten how to be loud. Each tone carried a feeling, a beginning that never finished, a doorway that was never opened, a word that was once on the tip of a tongue and then swallowed by history. Elara tried to speak, to ask where she was, but her voice was still light. Her question came out as a flicker. The realm answered with a pulse. Gradually, the nothingness grew edges. Not walls, not a room, more like a vast hollow realizing it had an inside. Lines of soft gold began to appear, tracing themselves slowly through the brightness, like veins growing inside a newborn star. They curved and looped, intersected and crossed, forming patterns that refused to settle, a geometry that kept almost becoming and then changing its mind. Elara's awareness coalesced. She felt weight return to her, the gentle tug of direction. Up, down, near, far, her body remembered itself around her. She inhaled, a first breath that tasted like dustless air. The light softened, and the patterns became clearer. She was standing in the center of a vast, luminous hollow. Not the lattice, not the realm she knew. Something older. The air here did not carry echoes. It carried possibilities. Elara looked down. There was no floor, only a slow swirl of pale light, as if someone had poured milk into the void and the universe was still deciding where it should settle. Each step she took left a faint impression of gold that faded as soon as she lifted her foot. Where am I? Her voice sounded small, not because the space was large, but because the silence here did not know what to do with sound. It was not hostile, it was unused, unused to being spoken into, unused to being witnessed, unused to being remembered. A presence stirred. Not from above, not from below, but from within the light itself. It didn't arrive, it clarified, as though a face had always been there inside the brightness, and only now chose to step forward. At first it was a shimmer, then a silhouette, then a figure woven from pale gold and deep shadow, its edges never quite agreeing on where they should rest. It flickered through forms, taller, smaller, masculine, feminine, old, ageless, human, not. Each potential self glimmed across it for a heartbeat before dissolving again. Finally, it settled into a shape that felt like all of them woven together. The air rang softly with a tone Elara recognized, not from this life, not from any lesson, but from somewhere beneath her oldest fear. "Ishmira," she whispered. The name vibrated through the chamber like a pebble dropped into a quiet lake. The figure smiled, not with lips, with the way its light folded. "You remember the sound," it said, its voice low and steady, like the first drum ever carved. "Good, then we can begin." Elara's pulse thudded in her ears. "The elders tried to stop me," she said. "Resonance," they called out. "The lattice," it flashed. Are they all right?" A faint flicker of shadow passed through Ishmira's light, gone as quickly as it came. "They are strained," it answered. "Not broken, just stretched too far across a truth they refuse to hold." Elara swallowed. Truth about what? Ishmira lifted a hand. Where its fingers moved, lines of gold unfurled across the hollow, forming an immense suspended pattern. It looked like the lattice, but not. The threads were thicker, rougher, less refined. They were not yet elegant. They were trying to be. "This," Ishmira said softly, "is what came before the lattice." The pattern trembled, its incomplete geometry shivering. "A realm," it continued, "that tried to weave itself without knowing what it was." Elara watched, breath shallow. "It looks unfinished," she murmured. "It is," Ishmira said. "It is the first attempt at remembering, made without memory. The first attempt at form, made without form. The first attempt at resonance, made without listening." Elara's chest tightened. "Is this a different world?" "No," Ishmira replied. "This is yours, just younger, more frightened, less honest." The pattern above them twitched. Some of its threads glowed brighter, others dimmed, as if embarrassed by their own crookedness. Do you know, Ishmira asked quietly, what the elders feared most when they first came into being? Elara shook her head. That they would remember, Ishmira said, what they themselves had forgotten. It let the words hang in the air like smoke. They were born from this first weave, it went on. Born to fix it, to refine it, to make it bearable, to make it beautiful. But in their devotion to correction, they buried the origin of the wound. They learned to tend the branches and left the roots to bleed in silence. Elara stared at the trembling pattern. So this, she gestured upward, this is the realm's first mistake? Ishmira's gaze deepened. No, it said. This is the realm's first fear. The word landed in her stomach. Fear of what? Of itself, Ishmira answered simply. Silence spread between them, soft and heavy. Elara looked down at her hands. They were glowing faintly again, the way they had in the Gate of Echoes, lines of remembered light threading beneath her skin. Why am I here, she asked. Why now, why me? Ishmira flickered, its outline blurring for a heartbeat, as if the question reached somewhere tender. Because you, it said, have done something no elder has ever done. Elara frowned. What? You have walked through your forgetting, Ishmira said, without abandoning your softness. It stepped closer. In every age, it continued, there are those who remember through hardness. They build walls, rules, structures. They protect the light by making it remote. The elders did this, gently but firmly. You... It lifted a hand and hovered it just above her chest. Remembered through feeling, through grief, through tenderness, through the child, the chained, the lost, the mother, the ashes that became flowers. Memories shimmered around them. Brief visions of the tree, the chains turned to water. Liza's song, the flame-shaped flower, the lighthouse mirror. You did not make distance, Ishmira said. You made contact. The last word rang like a bell. And that, it finished, is the only way this wound can be healed. Elara's throat thickened. This wound, this fear of itself. Where is it? Ishmira's light dimmed for a moment, like an exhale. That, it said, is what you must learn. But to see it, you must first understand why I was hidden. The hollow around them grew larger, as if the space itself was drawing back to listen. The elders did not lock me away because I was evil, Ishmira went on. They did not chain me because I wanted to break the realm. They hid me because I refused to forget what the realm had done to itself when it first felt fear. It lowered its hand. I am not the shadow you have seen in the fractures, it said quietly. I am the part of the realm that refused to lie about the dark. A slow chill moved through Elara's spine. She remembered the shadow in the lattice, the ink in clear water, the coiled outline of a patient face. If that wasn't you, she whispered, then what was it? The light above them shivered, and for an instant the incomplete pattern strained, trying to close a gap that had never been bridged. Ishmira's gaze turned serious. That, it said, was what happens when you bury truth for too long. Shadows are not born from darkness, Elara. They are born from light that has been told it is not allowed to speak. The words struck her like a hand pressed to her heart. She thought of all the times she had silenced herself to keep the peace. All the times she swallowed truth so others wouldn't flinch. How do you heal that? She asked, voice almost a whisper. Ishmira looked at her for a long moment, as if weighing her. You don't, it said at last. You meet it. The hollow flickered, the light tightening around them just a little. And that, it added softly, is why you are here. The hollow tightened, not in danger, but in focus, as if the space itself wanted to hear what came next. Ishmira stepped closer, its light thinning into a single clear line, like a brushstroke of dawn drawn across the void. Elara, it said, to understand the realm's wound, you must first see its very first question. A hum trembled beneath them, low, cautious, ancient. The gold patterns in the void shivered like threads trying to remember a forgotten melody. Elara swallowed. What question? Ishmira raised its hand. The hollow responded instantly. The swirling light beneath her feet deepened into a spiral, slow and deliberate, as if something long asleep was turning over in its dreams. A circle of brightness opened before her, a portal, but not like any she had ever seen. It didn't flare, it didn't shimmer, it didn't rush. It simply softened the world until a new one was revealed beneath it. The air shifted, warmer in places, colder in others, like passing through memories that had never fully settled. Ishmira gestured. "Come," it said. "This is where it began." Elara stepped through. The world on the other side was not a realm or a room or a landscape. It was an idea halfway through becoming real. The sky was a pale canvas, its colors unfinished, smears of early blue and quiet gold waiting to be chosen. The ground beneath her was soft, like damp soil that had never grown anything but still believed it might. Threads of light hung in the air, thin, hesitant, like thoughts that hadn't yet learned how to think themselves fully. "What is this place?" Elara whispered. Ishmira stood beside her, its form steadier now, as if this place remembered it more clearly. "This," it said gently, "is the first moment the realm ever asked whether it was allowed to be alive." Elara turned to it slowly. "It didn't know?" "No," Ishmira said. And that uncertainty, that hesitation, became the first crack. The unfinished sky wavered, as if reacting to the words. "Before the elders," Ishmira continued, "before memory, before form, before resonance, the realm was only potential. A child with too much power and no understanding of itself. It moved forward, light trailing behind it like soft footprints. And in that first breath of awareness, the realm felt something it had never felt before." Elara felt the answer before she heard it. "Fear," she murmured. Ishmira nodded. "Fear," it echoed, "not of darkness, not of loss, but of choice." Elara frowned, confusion tightening in her chest. Choice of what? Ishmira extended a hand, and the air before them ripened into a remembered image. A single point of light, glowing softly, pulsing like a newborn heart. "This," Ishmira said, "was the first spark of self-awareness. The moment the realm asked, 'If I exist, must I remain what I am?'" Elara's breath caught. "The realm didn't know," Ishmira continued, "if it had the right to change itself." The small light flickered, hesitated, and split. Into two, one bright, one dim. The dim one trembled like a candle in uncertainty. The bright one steadied as if bracing for responsibility. "This," Ishmira said softly, "is the first fracture. Not darkness, not evil, not corruption, indecision." Elara stared, her heart aching for the trembling glow. "That little one, it looks afraid." "It was," Ishmira said. It did not yet trust that it was worthy of becoming. The bright spark pulsed brighter, trying to merge back into the dim one, to shield it, to comfort it, to fuse with it. But the dim one pulled away, unsure, unready. And when it withdrew, Ishmira whispered, the realm broke. The world around them shuddered. The pale sky trembled. The soft soil rippled. Threads of potential collapsed into tangled light. The elders, Ishmira said, were born from the bright spark, the part of the realm that chose certainty. The shadow, it nodded toward the dim tremor of light, was the part of the realm that chose delay. Elara watched as the small, dim spark slipped beneath the unfinished soil, hiding itself. "I don't understand," she whispered. "That tiny spark is the shadow that appeared in the lattice?" "Yes," Ishmira said, "but not because it is wicked. It is not a monster, Elara. It is not darkness. It is not evil. It is the part of the realm that never learned how to feel safe enough to fully exist." Elara's throat tightened with unexpected tenderness. "It's afraid," she said again. "Yes," Ishmira replied softly. "And do you know what happens when fear is hidden for too long?" Elara looked at the trembling soil. "Oh, it grows," she whispered. Ishmira bowed its head. "And becomes everything it was never allowed to say out loud." Elara turned to it, her voice small. "How do you heal something like that?" Ishmira looked at her with light that had known centuries. "You do not heal it," it said. "You go to it." The world around them dimmed to a hush. "Down," Ishmira whispered, "into the soil of the realm's fear." It stepped closer, its hand lifting toward the trembling ground. "And you remind it," it said softly, "that it is allowed to come home." The soil split, slowly, carefully, as if opening an old wound that had been closed too tightly. A faint, trembling light glowed in the dark beneath. Not menacing, not hostile. "Just forgotten." Ishmira turned to Elara. "This," it said, "is what you were chosen for." Elara stared down into the trembling light. Her destiny, her path, her next descent, the realm held its breath. The descent into the unremembered. Elara stood at the edge of the opening, the soft soil of the realm's earliest fear broken open beneath her feet. The trembling light below was no larger than a lantern flame, fragile, unsure, as if it had never been touched by anything gentle. It pulsed once, a small, hesitant glow that reached upward the way a child lifts its hand without knowing if anyone will take it. Elara's breath caught. It didn't feel dangerous. It didn't feel wrong. It felt alone. Deeply, profoundly, achingly alone. Ishmira stepped beside her, its form steady now, as if the truth in this place strengthened it. "Elara," it murmured, "do not mistake smallness for weakness. This light has survived longer than memory itself." Elara nodded, her throat tight. She knelt at the edge, hands lowering toward the trembling glow. A soft heat rose from it. Not warmth, but the heat of something that had been terrified for too long. Ishmira watched her carefully. "Before you touch it," it said gently, "you must understand what it is." The chamber hummed, threads of unfinished light vibrating overhead. "This," Ishmira said, "is not darkness, not shadow, not malice, not corruption." Its voice deepened, a resonance that made the soil tremble in response. "This is the very first sensation the realm ever felt that it did not know how to hold." Elara looked up. "You mean fear?" Ishmira nodded, "but not fear of danger," it said. "Fear of being seen." The words hit something deep inside her chest. The little light below her pulled inward, curling in on itself as if it recognized the shame in that sentence. Elara's heart tugged. "It hides," she whispered, "because it thinks it's unworthy." "Exactly," Ishmira said. "And every wound in this realm, every fracture, every forgetting, every shadow, originated from this one belief. If I show myself, I will not be loved." The chamber's air shifted with the weight of that truth. Elara looked down again at the trembling spark. She saw it differently now, not as an artifact or a memory or a cosmological force, but as something that had once tried to exist and was told, by the very fabric of reality, that it was better to stay small. A familiar ache throbbed in her own ribs. She had known that feeling, more times than she could count. She whispered, "It looks like it's scared of me." "It is," Ishmira said. "Not because you are dangerous, but because you are honest." The spark flickered violently for a moment, as if shrinking from her presence. "The elders," Ishmira continued, "could never approach this light. They carry too much authority, too much structure, too much expectation. This part of the realm would crumble under their gaze." Elara blinked. "So only someone soft, someone who feels, someone who remembers pain through tenderness, could meet it safely," Ishmira finished. It looked at her, and in its voice there was something almost like gratitude. "This is why you were chosen." Elara reached out slowly. The spark reacted, flaring, then dimming, like a heartbeat caught between panic and longing. "I don't want to hurt it," she whispered. "You won't," Ishmira said. "Unless you lie." Elara froze. "What do you mean?" Ishmira lowered itself to her level, the glow of its form bathing the trembling spark in soft gold. "This part of the realm," it explained, "was wounded by being ignored, by being told its fear was unworthy, its smallness inconvenient, its hesitation a flaw." A thick silence pressed around them. "If you go to it," Ishmira continued, "you must go with the full truth of who you are." Elara swallowed hard. "No hiding? No pretending? No softening myself to make it easier?" "No," Ishmira said. "It has only ever been hurt by the people who refuse to be real." Elara felt her pulse pound. "Then what do I do?" Ishmira touched the soil, and the tremble of the spark softened. "You speak," it said, "not with words, with presence." "What presence?" "You're remembering," Ishmira whispered. Elara looked back down at her hands. The faint gold beneath her skin pulsed, steady and soft. Her whole journey flashed through her mind. The child, the chained woman, Liza's song, the mother's ashes, the lighthouse, the mirror. Each moment had carved truth into her hands, truth she had earned through grief, through courage, through gentleness. She inhaled slowly. "All right," she whispered. "I'll try." She lowered her hand toward the trembling spark. Not touching, just offering. The spark pulsed once, frantic, then again, confused. Then a third time, curious. Elara exhaled. "I see you," she whispered. the spark froze. The entire chamber held its breath. The unfinished sky above solidified for half a heartbeat, as if the realm itself had never heard anyone speak to it that way. Elara tried again, softer. "I see you," she said, "and I'm not afraid of what you feel." A long, low hum rolled through the soil. The spark unfurled, just a little, like a tiny flower opening its first petal. Ishmira stood absolutely still, watching with reverence. "Elara," it murmured, "you are doing what the elders never could." The spark's light spread across the soil, thin tendrils reaching out like the realm's first attempt at trusting itself. Elara leaned closer, her voice steady. "You don't have to hide anymore." The spark trembled. "You don't have to be small." The spark brightened. "You don't have to be afraid of being seen." The spark steadied. And then, slowly, painfully, beautifully, it rose from the soil and hovered between her hands. Soft, warm, alive. And for the first time since the realm began, the wound of forgetting allowed itself to be held. The little spark hovered between her hands, light trembling as if unsure whether it had the right to exist in the open air. Elara held still, not reaching, not closing her fingers, just letting it decide whether she was safe. The chamber grew so quiet she could hear her own heartbeat echo in the soil beneath her. Ishmira stepped back, giving the moment space as if witnessing something sacred. Then, soft as breath, the spark touched her palm. Elara gasped. Not from pain, but from the overwhelming rush of feeling that flooded through her. A memory opened, not one of hers, not one of the elders, not even one of the realm's great histories. No, this was older, more fragile, more personal. This was the memory the world had been built on, and then abandoned. The first beginning light swirled around her, pulling her into a vision so ancient it didn't have edges or time, only sensation. She stood in a space that wasn't a sky or a ground or a realm. It was a pulse, a single pulse of existence beating for the first time. A fragile awareness opened in the darkness, like a newborn taking its first breath. It didn't know its name. It didn't know form. It didn't know purpose. It only knew one truth: I exist. And in the moment it realized that, its light brightened with wonder, only to flicker sharply as something cold answered back. Not a voice, not a presence. A silence that felt like rejection. The new light flinched. Elara watched the tiny consciousness shrink in on itself. The silence deepened, heavy with indifference. And then it happened. The first fear in all creation was born. Not fear of danger, fear of being unworthy, fear of being seen and dismissed, fear of shining and having no one respond. The spark trembled in her hand as if reliving it. Elara whispered, "Oh, little one." The vision shifted. The elders' first mistake. She saw the moment the elders formed, memory, form, resonance, emerging from that same primordial pulse as refinements, not rulers. They saw the frightened spark and misunderstood. They thought it was instability, a flaw, a crack in the early light. So they contained it, protected the realm from it, locked it away gently, believing they were doing good. But in doing so, they created the first fracture. They taught the spark that its fear was dangerous, that its trembling was weakness, that its uncertainty was shame. The spark dimmed in her hand at the memory. Elara felt her heart tear. "They didn't mean to hurt you," she whispered. The spark gave a faint pulse, not agreeing, not forgiving, just acknowledging. Ishmira stepped closer, voice low. That was the elders' error. They tried to build a perfect realm by burying the parts they did not understand. Elara looked up sharply. That's what the silence fed on. "Yes," Ishmira murmured. The silence was not born from darkness. It was born from what was abandoned, Elara's awakening. The spark hovered inches from her heart now, as if wanting to settle there, but not sure if it deserved to. Elara opened her hands wider. "You've been waiting a long time," she whispered. The spark trembled. Long enough to forget what it feels like not to be afraid. A tiny filament of light reached toward her chest. Ishmira inhaled sharply. "Elara, if you let it in, it will show you everything." Elara nodded. "I want to see." "No," Ishmira said quietly. "It won't show you visions. It will show you your own forgotten selves, the ones you hid in order to survive." Elara's pulse kicked. She swallowed. "That's okay." Ishmira's expression softened, part awe, part warning. Few could endure that. Elara lifted the spark gently. Maybe that's why I'm here. The merging. The spark hesitated. A single second filled with the weight of an entire creation's fear, and then it pressed itself into her heart. Light stabbed through her chest, not painful, but unbearably intimate. She choked on her breath. Her knees buckled. The chamber shook. Ishmira darted forward but did not touch her. Elara, you must breathe. Breathe. Do not resist. The spark's memories poured into her. Every time she'd tried to be small to be safer. Every time she'd softened her truth to be accepted. Every time she'd hidden her fear to appear strong. Every shadow she'd carried that wasn't darkness, but unmet emotion. Elara cried out, not from agony but from recognition. She saw herself at every age she had dimmed. Every moment she had whispered, "If I show myself, I won't be loved." The spark flared inside her chest as if answering, "I know." I felt it first. Elara broke, not into pieces but open, wide open, and the chamber reacted. The unfinished sky cracked with white gold lightning. The ground rippled with awakening. The elders' distant voices echoed in panic. Elara has merged with the first fear. She wasn't ready. The realm will collapse. Ishmira stood tall. No, the realm will be healed. The new awareness. Elara rose slowly, light bleeding from her skin like she had swallowed the dawn. Her shadow stood beside her, steady, rooted, no longer trembling. Her voice came out low, hollowed by truth. "I know what the fractures really are." Ishmira bowed its head. "Tell me." Elara lifted her gaze. "They are not wounds from darkness." Her heartbeat echoed like a drum. "They are wounds from the parts of ourselves that were never allowed to exist." The chamber bowed to those words. Ishmira stepped forward. "Elara," it said softly, "what do you see now?" She looked past Ishmira toward the deeper part of the chamber, a tunnel of living light descending far below. "I see the place where the silence was born." Ishmira inhaled. "Elara, that place is forbidden." She stepped forward. Not anymore. Her lantern ignited in her hand without her touching it, a bright, unwavering flame. Ishmira whispered, "You understand what waits down there." Elara nodded. Yes. Her voice was steady. The truth. She stepped toward the descent, and the realm trembled to be continued.